Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we will review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Shabbat, Kuf Lamed Hey through Kuf Mem Aleph, 135 through 141. Kuf Lamed Hey, 135. Rav Asi tells us, Kol she'imo tme'a leida mimo lishmona, that any child, any boy, whose mother contracts birth impurity, tumat leida, on account of the child's birth, such a boy has to be given a circumcision, a brit milah, on the 8th day. V'chol she'eni mot me'aleda, eni mo lishmona, and any child whose birth mother does not contract birth impurity does not have to be given a circumcision on the 8th day. The classic example of this is a child born by cesarean section, not in the normal fashion. The woman will not become yoledet in the halachic sense. She will not be impure, and so the bris need not be on the 8th day. And if the 8th day happens to be a Shabbat, then the bris is postponed until Sunday. From where is this known? Minalan. How do you know this is true? Shene'emar, as it says in the Torah, Isha ki tazri av yalda zachar v'tama, that first the Torah says, if a woman shall give birth to a boy, and the subsequent verse is, Uvayom hashmini, on the 8th day, yimol basar lato, on the 8th day you shall circumcise the foreskin of the child, to teach you that one is connected to the other, and in the absence of tumat leida, there is no 8th day circumcision requirement. To this, Abayes responded, Dorot Rishonim yochichu, that the early generations will prove this point wrong, that from the days of Avraham Avinu, Abraham, up until the giving of the Torah on Har Sinai, there was a concept of an 8th day circumcision, and yet there was no notion of Tumat Leida. Goes to show you that these two concepts are not necessarily connected. To this, the Gemara responds, Nitna Torah v'nitchadsha halacha, that when the Torah was given, the law changed in a significant way. That there is a chidush, a novelty in the law, that now 8th day circumcision and Tumat Leida go together. Kuf Lamed Vav, 136. Meit betoch shloshim v'amda v'nitkadsha. What happens if a woman was pregnant and her husband dies and she gives birth to a baby and that baby dies within 30 days? And now this woman goes ahead and gets married to another man, or is kiddushin, has betrothal with another man. The question is whether or not the baby was a viable baby. If it was, and would have lived longer absent some unforeseen circumstance, then this woman is not bound in a yibum relationship to her former brother-in-law. However, if the baby was not viable, and that's why it died at less than 30 days, then this woman will not have had any children, and will still be tied in a levirate marriage bond to her former brother-in-law. So what does she do with her new marriage that she's contracted? Gemara says, Im Eshet Yisrael he, if she married a non-Kohen, a regular Yisrael, choletzet, then she can do the chalitza ceremony with the ex-brother-in-law and go back to being married to her new husband. V'im Eshet Kohen he, but if she married a Kohen, and a Kohen cannot marry a woman who underwent chalitza, then eina choletzet. We just dispense with the chalitza altogether and allow her to remain married to this Kohen. How can we do this? Because the concern that the child was not really viable because it died at less than 30 days is a concern, it's a chashash, but it's not definitely true. And therefore we can disregard it and allow her to move on in life with her Kohen husband. Kuf Lamed Zayin, 137. Omar Shmuel, Chalatzto Chama. What happens if a baby had a fever and the fever dissipated? And now we're waiting for the child to get better in order to give the child a brit milah. Notnin lo kol shiva lahavroto. We give the child a week to recover. The question is, how do we reckon, how do we calculate that week? Do we calculate me'et la'et, 7 full 24-hour periods? Or do we count 7 calendar days, even though it is less than a full 7 days? And to this, the answer is that although from birth we count calendar days and not full 24-hour periods, when it comes to a baby recovering from illness, we do reckon things me'et la'et with 24-hour periods. Kuf Lamed Chet, 138. Vilon, a window shade. Mutarlim toto matalaforko. You're allowed to put it up and take it down on Shabbat. Rashi explains what is this vilon. Masach shekaneged petach. It is a curtain in front of an opening in the building. And why is it that we're allowed to take it down and put it up on the Shabbat? She'ein ohel elami shasui ke'ein gag. That we do not consider something construction of a tent unless it has a roof. but this being only a vertical wall, a side wall, not a roof, it is okay. Kuf Lametet, 139. This concerns burial on holy days. B'yom tov rishon yitasku ba'amamin. If a person died and needs to be buried, and it's the first day of Yom Tov, so it is the Torah day of Yom Tov, then Gentiles shall conduct the burial. They shall take care of the malachot, the prohibited labors, and effect the burial. B'yom tov sheni, if it is on the second day of Yom Tov in the diaspora in Chutz La'aretz, yitasku bo Yisrael, then the Jews themselves should violate the laws of Yom Tov and effect the burial. What about on Rosh Hashanah? So ordinarily Rosh Hashanah is not like the 2 days of Yom Tov in the diaspora, but rather Rosh Hashanah is considered Yom Ha'arichta, like one long day. It's 48 hours, which is treated as one day of great halachic seriousness. Yet, while that's true for most matters, it's not true concerning burial. That on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Jews can conduct the burial. Kuf Mem, 140. Here we find some moral guidance. Rav Chisda tells us that a person who is capable of eating barley bread and yet goes ahead and eats wheat bread, that person violates bal tashchit, being wasteful, in the sense that they are being frivolously luxurious. They could have done with less, and they're eating more. Similarly, a person who is capable of drinking beer, shati shichra, but in fact goes ahead and drinks wine, shati chamra, such a person is guilty of bal tashchit. Why? Because they could have done with, materially speaking, less, and instead they were extravagant and had more. This is not to say that a person cannot enjoy the occasional luxury, but it is to say that a person should not live beyond their means and squander their resources, and to do so, in fact, would be a moral ill of Baal Tashchit. 141. Haiman desachi b'maya. A person was bathing in the river, in the water, on Shabbat. Lina gave nafshe beresha. First he should dry himself off, v'hadar lisalik, and then emerge out of the body of water. In other words, to towel off, to dry off, while still in the water. Dilma atila atuye dalad amot bekamlit, because if he does not do that, then droplets of water might be on this person's body, and he will carry those droplets of water 4 cubits in the kamlit, in the semi-public domain, which is rabbinically prohibited on Shabbat. To this, the Gemara says, but if that's true, ihachi kanachit nami kadachi kocho dal ramos, that when a person moves about in the water, in the lake, in the river, in the ocean, and moves their arms, well, they're going to move water a distance of 4 cubits. In other words, they're going to create waves, and those waves go beyond the legitimate distance. So that should be forbidden as well, and yet we know that it's not. Why is it not forbidden? Because kocho bekamilit lo gazru. The sages did not decree a law against moving items indirectly through one's physical force, but not through one's physical person in a karmelit. Everyone have a great week.